Hello and welcome everyone to the debut episode of Fangirl Hell. We'll be exploring fandom and more specifically girl fandom and how that relates to our culture, our lives, and the things we're interested in. I'm Cosmic, lifelong nerd and aspiring genius, and my co-host is...
Christy Lee Stewart. I'm a writer, author, and blogger. Today our subject is going to be a general topic. It's going to be about fandom. It seemed like a good place to start so we could get our bearings. So first, what is fandom? Fandom, the definition is kind of like people who come together to share sympathy and camaraderie about a general interest. So not to get all biblical on your ass, but it's like Jesus said, when two people gather in my name, I'm there. So when two people gather in the name of Star Trek or Hunger Games, fandom is there. So what would your opinion be on the least you'd have to do to constitute an official fandom?
That's interesting. I was just thinking about that. Do you think there's a difference between somebody saying that they're a fan and somebody saying that they're in a fandom? Because, obviously there are people who, casually enjoy something and they may consider themselves a fan, but they don't actively participate in the fandom side of things. They don't participate in the fandom community. So, do you think they could still consider themselves as part of the fandom if they don't actively participate? I mean, I know there are things that I'm a fan of, and I would consider myself being in the fandom, but I don't actively engage with the fandom. Like, I'll sort of silently lurk around message boards or communities, but I don't actively post there. I don't actively engage with those people, but I consider myself part of the fandom. So, I don't know. I think
I'm going to have to disagree with that. I think if you participate in a fandom, then you're in the fandom. But if you're just a fan of something and you consume and don't contribute to it, I don't know if you can really say you're in a fandom.
Well,
do you feel like that would make you less of a fan, though?
No. I think it depends on why you aren't engaging, For me, a lot of times, if there's something that I consider myself a fan of and I go to, the fandom communities and things, but I don't actively engage in it, a lot of times for me, it's more a personal thing of just being somewhat shy and not wanting to, put myself out there. It's personal hang-ups, basically. But then I'm sure there are people who consider themselves a fan of something and they maybe have gone to those fandom blogs or fandom Tumblrs, whatever, and thought, okay, those people are nuts. I'm not like them. So I think it depends on why you aren't engaging in that fandom.
Yeah, and now that I think about it, the consumption of fandom, the consumption of fanfic and fan art, that in a way is participation.
Yes.
So I guess you changed my mind.
Yes.
The first time it's ever happened, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, not bad. Now I lost my train of thought.
We were talking about fandom.
I know, but I'm trying to think.
Okay, so I'll jump in here since you're drowning. I know when we were just discussing the birth of this podcast and how I brought up the fact that fandom can be anything and anything can be fandom.
Oh, that's right.
Most people when they think of fandom, I think they think of movies, books, TV shows, celebrities, things like that, entertainment media. But, if you look hard enough and long enough, you can find a fandom dedicated to just about anything, an art movement, an insect or an animal, knitting, grammar rules, nail polish companies. I mean, you might have to look long and hard, but you're going to find it.
Kind of like that internet rule, that Rule 34, that if it exists, there is porn for it.
Yep.
So, I'm sure it has a number of its own, but if it exists, there's a fandom for it.
Yep, exactly.
And I have seen some very specific fandoms that have kind of blown my mind.
Like what? I'm curious now.
I know. Okay, well, let's play a game, and I bet I can beat you. You tell me what's the weirdest fandom you've ever heard of, and I will see if I can top you.
Oh my god. Wow. I can't think of any weird ones off the top of my head. I'm trying to... Okay, well... okay, this is the only thing that's coming to mind. So I think the fandom itself isn't so strange. It's what they're a fan of that's strange.
Okay.
Um, so there was this artist called, I want to say his name was Art Frank, and he did a lot of different style, like pictures, paintings, drawings. But the ones that he's probably most remembered for are these bizarre, I guess you could almost call it a pinup photo, but it's not really a pinup photo. Like they would always be this woman carrying a paper grocery bag with a stalk of celery and a can of something sticking out of the top, and her underwear would be down at her ankles. She would have this shocked look on her face like, oh no, my elastic's broken. And one day, just browsing the internet, I came across this website dedicated to this guy, and just
how did you find it, though? What were you Googling that you found this?
I don't remember. I have no remembrance. I don't even know how I got there.
I'm sure.
But it was just so bizarre to me. Like, there's some person, or maybe several people, I don't know, who have dedicated time and hours and work and sweat to creating a website about a guy who makes pictures about a woman with panties down her ankles. And everyone, I swear to you, every picture, the woman is holding a grocery bag, and there is always a stalk of celery sticking out. Always. I'm convinced it's a metaphor for something.
Yeah, I would say obviously. Is it the same woman?
No, it's different women.
Maybe I could get in on this. Is he still alive?
I don't know. I have no idea. I don't even know if I could find the website again.
I think we should get into this fandom. I think I can still top you, though.
Okay.
And you'll probably, I'm used to losing to you, so I'm prepared for you to say, oh, yeah. But okay. I have been surprised recently to find that there is actually a pretty big fandom around Nazis.
What?
And slashing them together.
Okay.
You haven't heard of that? Okay, I win.
No. Hang on. Okay, there's some movie, I remember reading somebody's review about it, but I can't remember what it's called. But it was set like in Nazi Germany, and while nothing specifically gay happened, the person who wrote the review about it said that they were shipping two of the characters now. And like I came across a video on YouTube that was basically like a fan-made slash video, I guess, of these two characters from that movie.
But that's not as weird, though.
But they were Nazis in training.
Still.
Close.
I mean, I found fan art and fan fiction of like the big one is Himmler. Like, everybody loves him with everybody else.
Oh my gosh.
One of the OTPs is Hitler and Goebbels.
Oh my god.
There's like Photoshop photos of them like kissing and in bed together. And there's these romantic fanfics where they're just like looking out over Nazi Germany and then they get it on.
So that's when you need to ask yourself, like, are these people doing this because they're actually genuinely a fan of like Hitler, or are they doing it in more of an ironic sense?
I wouldn't go as far as to say it's ironic. But I wonder about it. Like, on the
ironic, the hipster sense of ironic, where it's like, oh, I totally
appreciate it in an ironic way, that way. I can hipster appreciate this. As a person, it's kind of weird. But on the fanfic and in the fan art, they all like, oh, I don't defend what happened. I don't think it was right. I think Hitler was a bad guy, but here's a picture of him getting his cock sucked. It's
of all the historical figures.
Yeah. And I have seen other historical figures, but those take the cake.
I don't know if it would necessarily constitute a fandom, but there's this community on LiveJournal where people make art with their period blood.
Oh, I love that. That's a great idea.
I told you about this in the past. You obviously don't remember me telling you because you're being surprised.
I may have been high at the time, so you got to give me a break. But do you remember when I tried to sell my period blood on eBay?
Yeah, they wouldn't let you, would they?
No.
Make it into a painting. Let's see if you can sell it then.
Well, it's not like I tried to sell it in a vial. It was like on one of those soft wipies.
Yeah.
It kind of looked like a Rorschach test, so I think it was artistic enough, but no, I got pulled.
Maybe if you, like, framed it behind sealed glass.
I heard seal and I thought, oh yeah, like print out a picture of seal and paste it on there. That's art. That's a fandom.
Oh my god! Do you remember? This was like a couple years back. Some girls like took pictures of like she wrote a letter in her period blood to like some K-pop star, and then nobody believed that she'd actually done it, so she took a picture of like the bloodied pad. Oh, and she even like sprinkled some pubic hair into the letter. Do you remember that?
No, who was that too?
Oh my god, I want to say it was someone from 2PM.
Oh my gosh. Those poor boys are like 12. They've never seen a vagina. This isn't fair. Okay, you go on, but let's get to the next topic. The next topic is internet and how that affects fandom. Which,
we've already somewhat been talking about that anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way the stuff we were talking about could even exist.
I know.
Like, the internet.
I would argue that fandom as we know it today, like the creation sparks of it probably started back in like the 60s and 70s when people were creating and self-publishing fanzines for shows like Star Trek.
Star Trek, yeah.
And I think I remember reading somewhere once that they did it for like Starsky and Hutch too, but I'm not really sure. But you know those like shows from that era that have like a cult status following today.
What is that one show where they had the car? It was they just remade it.
Dukes of Hazzard?
Yeah, that had a huge fandom following.
Yes, it did. And, you know, back then, like, there was no easily accessible way to instantly share something with people, like, across the country or even on another continent. You had to, like, snail mail something, or if you got lucky, maybe there was a once-a-year meetup somewhere.
Yeah, but how would you even find out about it?
Exactly! Like, you'd have to be part of the fanzine!
Yeah.
But, you know, now that we have, like, the internet, and a lot of people have high-speed internet, and there's places like YouTube and stuff like that, it's so much more, like, instantly accessible. You could spend an afternoon on YouTube and become a fan of something that you had never even heard of before. All it takes is one video to get you interested, and then you're down the rabbit hole.
Is it, you know, that Patton Oswalt, do you know who he is?
Yes.
Did you read that essay that he wrote? The
Yes.
Wake Up Geek Culture, Time to Die?
Yes!
Yeah, he talked about it like,
basically he
like
said
it was a bad thing, yeah.
For things now, which I think is ridiculous.
I can get where he's coming from.
But at the same time, being part of the generation that uses computers and uses the internet and uses YouTube, I can't imagine not having that. Like I have been a fan of something when it was hard to get a hold of it. Like, just as an example, the Korean rock band Nell. I became a fan of them back in like 2003, I think, when basically it was impossible to find anything in English for them. So I was just like blindly clicking on things on Korean websites.
Yeah.
And now, several years later, you can find hundreds and hundreds of English language things, people talking about them, fan communities. They even like have a YouTube page now, and they put English subtitles on one of their videos.
But, I mean, that's great, but doesn't that make you feel, you know, a little bit mad? That's why I can see where he's coming from, because, yeah, back in the, you know, early 2000s when we, you know, just had streaming videos from Korean websites, or they were uploaded to really shitty Chinese servers and went really slow. Everything was in Korean, so you had to learn the Hangul to get anywhere, and you couldn't find anything with subtitles. It was like, you know, I'm a fan of this band and I have to work extra hard to be a fan. And now it's like, oh, well, you guys can't call yourselves like diehard fans like we used to back in the day where we had to work for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I'm of two minds, because on the one hand, I totally get where you're coming from. Like, when you have to work for it, it does make you a more dedicated fan. But on the other hand, without having the ease of the internet, there are so many things that I'm a fan of now that I would never have known about or would have had access to.
Yeah, I think that goes two ways. It's like, without the internet, you wouldn't have been a fan of some things because you wouldn't have known about it, and you also wouldn't have been a fan of some things because what got you into it was the fandom itself. Because there are lots of things that I got into because I saw people enjoying their fandom, and I thought, oh, what's that about? I want to get into that. And you couldn't have that without the internet, because you wouldn't, you know, walk by a park and see people, you know, dressed up, you know, with plastic swords and stuff and be like, oh, go check that out. No.
Yeah.
You're going to leave them to themselves.
But then, like, I also think there are, even though we do, like, have a lot more ease of access with the internet, there are still things that you have to work at to get. Like, I had been torrenting a TV show from another country, and it was really hard to track down the torrents for it. And I got tired of, like, waiting for days for this thing to download. So I looked into, like, rerouting my IP address through a proxy server so that I could fake the TV show's website into thinking I was in that country just so I could watch the TV show. It's not like, just because we have the internet doesn't mean we don't still have to jump through hoops to get it something.
Yeah, that's true. But it's like a whole different kind of, like...
It's a different kind of hoop jumping.
Yeah.
I'm sure, like, bringing back the Patton Oswalt essay, back in his day, it was sort of like, oh, hey, man, my friend saw this TV show, and I got, like, a 100th generation VHS copy of it. You want to watch? Now it's like, well, you might have to install this plugin and then reset your IP address, but then you can watch it. You know, it's just different hoops.
You know, another thing that struck me in reading his essay, because, you know, mostly what he talked about was, you know, back in the day, you know, you were a real fan and, you know, you had to really try. Well, it was also really from a male's point of view, because back in the day, I mean, it was really hard for girls to get into things that were seen as geeky fandoms. And with the internet, we can kind of cluster with ourselves and safely do it. Because I as a kid, I would go to the comic book store to get my comic books. But because of the guys, my peers, kids I went to school with, they wouldn't let me in certain parts of the comic book store. It was like, that part girls can be in.
They rope it off?
No, they would stand around there when we came in and be like, you can't come over here. Over here is for, like, the real fans of stuff.
Oh.
You know, and...
Yeah.
So, you know, Patton Oswalt, he comes from a privileged point of view, as geekdom is. And
yeah. But I would argue there are probably certain fandoms that are more accepting or maybe even dominated by girls. Like, obviously, Star Trek has a lot of male fans. But going back to that whole, like, 60s, 70s self-published fanzine things, like, a lot of females participated in that. Like, that's where basically, like, the birth of Slash came from. And that's a heavily female-dominated area of fandom.
I mean, I think that's where the division between fangirl and fanboy is, which we'll talk about on a future show. But there really is a difference between fangirling and fanboying and what that means. And without the internet, the culture of fangirling wouldn't be able to thrive.
Yeah, we'd be like snail mailing like photo manipulations and fanfics to each other.
But we still would. I think that goes to show how dedicated fangirls really are deep down.
Totally.
Obviously, we work really hard, you know, for our fandoms, but sometimes we're a little embarrassed about it or a little hesitant to be open about it in public.
Yes. I think part of that comes from the fact that because we all have, like, the internet now, and fandom has so heavily come together on the internet, it makes it a lot more easily accessible to people who aren't in the fandom to find out about it. And, you know, in order to be embarrassed or afraid to let your freak flag fly about your fandom, the public has to know about that fandom. And the only way that, you know, outsiders are going to know about that is through exposure to it, more than likely on the internet. I mean, a few years ago, I was watching a British chat show with Elijah Wood on it. And
which show was it?
The Graham Norton Show.
Oh, I love him.
I know, it's so good. But I think back then it may have been So Graham Norton, because I know he had that show and then it was the Graham Norton Show. I don't remember which incarnation of it was. But
the earlier one was way better.
Oh, I loved the audience questions. But okay.
Oh, yes. That's another topic.
Yeah. We can... British Invasion show! But yeah, so Elijah Wood was on there to give an interview about Lord of the Rings, and he brought this topic up himself. He was giddily, excitedly, gleefully talking about these extremely graphic / photo manipulations that were made of characters in Lord of the Rings. When I saw that, like, my mind was blown. I was like, okay, officially the mainstream has caught on to the dark alleys of fandom. Like, they know. So all that brings us to the topic of the public perception of fandom. And I know you probably have maybe have a different opinion or experience. I'm sure anybody who might be listening may have a different opinion or experience, but it's always sort of been my observation that a lot of people, for them, fandom is something that exists only online or only in their private lives. And a lot of times that's by their own choice. They purposefully keep that secret. And a lot of people hide the fact that they're in a fandom or just how deeply into the fandom they are from people that they know in real life, unless they know that those people are also in that fandom. And I know, I've definitely done that. I've held back about how much of a fan I am of something, or I've completely hidden the fact that I'm in a fandom just because I want to just avoid any like odd reactions I might get. And I don't know.
Is there certain types of fandom that you feel more embarrassed about than others?
I don't necessarily know for me if it's purely an embarrassment thing. I mean, I would say not as much online, but in real life, I'm sort of a very, like, private or guarded kind of person, just in general. I bite my tongue a lot. I keep my ideas to myself a lot in person. So I feel like anytime I have to sort of share something about myself that I tend to keep private, I get embarrassed about it or nervous about it. So I don't know if it's embarrassment over the fandom or just my own personal issues.
Yeah. I wish I could say the same, but I have had times in my life where I've felt embarrassed about a fandom because the way I talk and conduct myself, and I guess some ways I look because I dye my hair and, I'm like, wear all black clothes and I'm known as being like this hardcore feminist that, I kept to myself for a long time the fact that I love soap operas and I love The Bachelor and I love romance novels because it was like the antithesis of what people perceived me as.
Yeah.
That, it was kind of easier not to blow their paradigm of me, but also it was a little bit of, well, I liked people thinking, I was really tough and I was embarrassed of showing, like a cuter, girlier side.
Yeah.
But I've since gotten over that because I realized that
it's like, screw them. You like what you like.
Yeah, and I saw other people, admitting that they liked really girly stuff, and I thought, oh, they're really tough. They're really cool and self-assured. Like, they don't care what people think.
Yeah.
So then I started being like, yeah, I'll tell anybody. Yeah, I love The Bachelor. Did you see The Bachelor last night? Yeah.
I think for me, like, I would definitely say my biggest fandom as far as scope and scale go is sci-fi. Like, I love science fiction. I've loved science fiction since I was a little kid. And I don't really express that a lot to other people. And the times that I have, it's generally with a, like, nervous, sheepish grin on my face. And I'm like, yeah, I like sci-fi. I'm a big sci-fi nerd. Like that. And a lot of times, like, people seem so shocked, like they don't believe me. Their reaction's usually like, really? Really? It's like they don't believe me or they don't grasp quite how into sci-fi I am. Like, yeah. I'll get like, oh, you like sci-fi? Yeah, I've seen Star Wars too. And it's like, I'm just thinking in my head, like, you don't understand. Like, 95% of the fictional books I own are sci-fi. I've been watching Star Trek since before I lost all my baby teeth. Almost every t-shirt I own is a reference to something sci-fi related. I took a science fiction literature course in college because I thought it'd be fun to spend weeks reading and critically dissecting sci-fi. Like, I am really into sci-fi. Like, I don't think
Do you think people don't believe you because you're a girl or because of the perception they have of you?
I think it might be a little of both, depending on who it is. I really don't know. I think because a lot of times the people I get that reaction from are people that, like, I don't see on a daily basis, or even if I do, it's not so much in a personal sense. It's more like a workplace thing. But I don't know. I mean, I definitely could understand how it could be because I'm a girl. I definitely can understand that because a lot of people associate a sci-fi fan more with a male than a female.
Yeah.
But I really don't know.
Do you think, though, because, I mean, I know you as the fangirl. That's the context we met each other.
Yes.
Under, and that's kind of how we communicate. So yes. I know you as this person who's super brainy about fandom, who knows everything about everything, especially when it comes to sci-fi. I mean, before we started the show, I mean, you were humming, Star Wars.
Darth Vader's theme.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you behave differently when you're, normal human being person, not fangirl sci-fi person?
I would say yes. And like I said earlier, I think a lot of that's just my own personal stuff. Like I said, I'm a very like private, guarded person, and I think that's probably a bit of what it is.
So do you think those people are both you, or is one the more real you?
I would say they're both a facet of who I am. I'm a multifaceted being, Christy.
You have trans personalities.
So, getting back to the topic, there are definitely certain fandoms that are more publicly acceptable than others, like fandoms for sports teams or musicians, and there are expressions or displays of fandom that are more acceptable. Like, I know, people gather sometimes for like a day-long music festival or a multi-day music festival or a several hours-long sports event, and they might, dress up to show off or show support, and they aren't typically seen as like bizarre for doing something like that. But something happens when you transfer that same sort of behavior into something like a comic book convention or an anime convention. Suddenly it's like, oh, those people simply must be the outer fringes of society for dressing up like that. And I don't really get...
If you put like somebody in a sports jersey with their face painted next to, say, like someone in cosplay is like Han Solo, there'd be a definite joke of one of these isn't getting laid.
Yes! And it's like, it's not so different from like painting your face or body for a sports event and going to a convention dressed like a Klingon or Sailor Moon or a Transformer. They're both perfectly normal and accepted and expected from those respective settings, and they're both really extreme displays of fandom, but it seems like the sports fan with the painted face is more accepted and expected by society than the poor schlub dressed like Worf at a convention.
It's funny because I know it's because of where I'm coming from as a fangirl, but to me, looking at the person who paints their face and wears the jersey and stuff, it's like, you're getting excited about a dude throwing a ball through a hole. Like, yes. At least if I'm like, into a book or a series or something, I mean, that has artistic value and culture, and
yeah, exactly.
I deserve to wear this cape.
Definitely. And like, I think like with people who are like in the fandom or fans of like a musician or something, like it's totally acceptable, to obsessively like collect their CDs or try to track down some rare foreign import or something, but put that onto something that's typically considered more geeky or something, and you're like some obsessed freak. Like, like it's definitely like context and setting mean everything as far as public perception of a fandom goes. Definitely.
I watch a lot of reality shows, especially in the high channels of the style and whatever, because I just love those crazy obsessive reality shows. And it seems like more and more they're doing stories about a geek culture because it's becoming popular, and you see married couples who are trying to adjust to married life, and the woman, of course, wants all the room for all her shoes, and she knows the names. It's Prada, and it's this, and it's that. And the guy, he's seen as like the butt of the joke, and okay, you have to get rid of like your dolls now, and it seems to me it's the same thing. I mean, you're fangirling over shoes, and that's okay because they're, industrial kind of thing that you kind of need. Well, you could walk barefoot. I think I kind of need my dolls.
Speaking of barefoot, like I had a professor when I was in college who was from Australia, and he never wore shoes. Like he walked around the campus barefoot, and he told us like he used to be a professor at some university in Canada, and they told him, when it started snowing, they're like, we want you to wear shoes if something happens, if you get like frostbitten or something, we don't want you to sue us. And he's like, trust me, I'm not gonna sue you, I'm not gonna sue you. But they kept like insisting that he wear shoes, so finally he like drew up a contract that said basically, I will not sue you if something happens to my feet.
He is. That's hardcore.
That is.
I'm picturing him with like a knife between his teeth too. Like, oh, that's not a knife. This is a knife.
Okay, so to wrap this all up, there's a quote from a TV show it's one of my favorite TV shows at the moment. And to paraphrase that quote,
you gotta say what the TV show is.
It's called Outland. It's an Australian TV show.
Okay.
That's that one I was telling you about a couple days ago.
Well, you have to tell our listeners what it's about then.
Well,
like a quick summary.
I'm awful at doing quick summaries. It's gonna sound so much lamer than it really is.
That's your charm, though.
Okay, it's a misfit group of sci-fi fans. There you go. So basically the quote that one of the characters says is, I'm paraphrasing, I don't think this is exactly what he said, but it's the gist of it. Everyone's a geek, it's just that music geeks are cool and sports geeks are mainstream. And I think that precisely sums up what we've been talking about,
Yeah.
Like, everybody's got something fanish, nerdy, geeky about them, but it's just some things are more mainstream or cool than others.
Yeah. I think that's a good note to end on. So do you want to go into our super cool extra segments now?
Sure.
I'll go first since mine's kind of lame and
Okay.
really sentimental.
Okay.
And let you think. See, I love this series of books by Gail Carriger, and it's called The Parasol Protectorate. And I'm so sad, the last book in the series came out. Oh, and I read it, and it was so sweet. And my ultimate squeeze this week was when two characters finally got together. This one had been becoming a vampire, and he was dating.
Becoming a vampire?
Yeah, because
like you grow into?
Well, in the series, it's like it's a steampunk kind of like manor punk story, and vampires, like you have to like go and live with the vampires and kind of work for them and
Okay.
maybe let you be one. So that's what he was doing. He was trying to become a vampire, and he was dating the dude he was working for, and he accidentally, and this is spoiler alert if anybody is reading the series, he accidentally becomes a werewolf instead. So then they're not allowed to be together. And then you have this other guy who's the werewolf beta, and he has this whole history of being, abused sexually and physically. And they just make the perfect couple, and they came together finally in the end and got together, and it was so sweet. So that's my squee. What's yours?
Well, if it was already Monday, I would probably be talking about Game of Thrones because I'm so excited to see the next episode, but that doesn't air until Sunday.
So that doesn't count.
So this is like the thing that made me the most excited this whole week. So I don't watch the full episodes because I would have to stream it and the website hates me. But there's this British soap opera called Hollyoaks that I occasionally keep track of, mostly by like watching clips on YouTube because I could watch it from their website, but it buffers so much that it's ridiculous.
That's why I don't watch it. I want to watch it, but I want to watch it all the way through.
Yeah.
I can't stand to do like you do and, watch it in pieces. I feel like I'm an American. I should be able to do it.
But, so, spoiler alerts, although anybody who's listening to this probably has already seen it, because it happened early this week. Okay, so there's 4 characters. 2 of them are teenagers, and 2 of them are, I would say, are like in their early 20s. The 2 teenagers are Callum and George, and the 20-somethings are Stee and Doug. So both of these 2 sets of friends had like a bromance going on between their respective pairs. And like people were saying, oh, are they going to make something more of this? Are they going to make something more of this? Because Hollyoaks is fairly notorious for having people change their sexuality on a dime.
Yeah.
So everybody's like, for weeks, people have been saying, oh, is it going to be Callum and George? Oh, is it going to be Stee and Doug? Which one's it going to be? So this past week, they've sort of hinted that Doug may be developing feelings for Stee. And I'm torn because yes, I squeed over this because I'm excited to see where this story goes. I'm so excited to see where this goes. Like, I'm so excited. But at the same time, I wish it could be both.
That's what fanfic's for.
And plus, I feel like as far as laying the groundwork for something romantic to develop, I feel like they did a better job of laying that groundwork with George and Callum than they did with Stee and Doug. Because the emotional connection seems stronger between Callum and George than it does Stee and Doug. But I'm still really excited to see where it goes. So I guess that would be my squeeze of the week.
Okay, well, it kind of sounds like that's your WTF of the week, unless you have another one.
It could be both.
It sounds like both. So my WTF of the week is really stupid. Have you seen that meme of the ridiculously photogenic guy?
No.
You haven't? Oh my gosh. You must not have been on Tumblr.
Was it the guy you got in like somewhat of an altercation with? We're like,
no.
Jaw photo.
No, that's something completely different.
Okay.
On another topic. This guy, he had his picture taken, I think it was just, some press junket, was at one of these walkathon, runathon, whatever. And he gets his picture taken, and he's just one of the dudes in the crowd, but he's so ridiculously photogenic and good looking that he becomes a meme, and people, write stuff on it. Like the one I saw this morning was, has sex with your daughter, offer him condoms. No matter what he does, he's so good looking that he can get away with anything. And it's become so popular. He's been on the news being interviewed about becoming a meme, and people are writing fanfic about him, and he has his own fan sites now. And this has happened within just a couple days, and it's like, oh, so stupid. So I don't begrudge people the fandom, but he's kind of not my type. He's like one of those amazingly good looking guys.
I have to see this guy now. Hold on.
He is good. Look it up. He's good looking. But one thing I thought was funny, though, right in front of him is this girl who gets cropped out of the meme that people use.
What's the meme called?
Ridiculously Photogenic Guy, which is a long title for a meme.
Oh, really? All I had to type was RID, and it comes up as the first search topic.
He's hugely popular. But this girl that gets cropped out, I love her because she became a meme of, like, girl who are quite, can make it, always falls behind that guy. And it became like a little mini fandom, and she's like, get your photo taken with ridiculously photogenic guy, get cropped out. So I feel for her. So that's my...
Oh, they were at a race?
Yeah. So what do you think? Is he good looking enough to deserve all this fandom? I know, that's what I thought. He's basically good looking. He's just not my type. I like, big, fat, hairy guys. Do that, smile of his that just makes me think he's up to something. Okay, so on that ridiculously good-looking note, that is the end of the show. Next week we'll have a completely new topic for you, and we'll have a bunch of other bullshit to talk about. So, bye!
Bye!